Have you ever repeated affirmations like, I am confident, I am enough, I attract abundance, only to feel absolutely nothing change? Like the words just floated in the air and evaporated while your life stayed exactly the same. You're not alone. There's a psychological reason this happens, and it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because your brain is wired for congruence, not wishful thinking. In this video, we're going to break down why affirmations often fail and what actually rewires your self-image. You do this with memory, with behavior, with the identity loops that quietly run your reality. Because the truth is, you don't become what you say. You become what you prove, consistently. This is Ego Edit, where we explore why we do what we do and engineer our minds to work in our favor. Because every interesting idea has a grain of truth to it. There was a time when I tried affirmations religiously. I'd say them every morning, write them in my journal, even record them on my phone to play while I slept. And for a while, I thought I was doing something. I felt a little buzz of motivation, a temporary high. I even felt a sense of control, like I was hacking my reality through language. But after a few months, I realized that nothing in my life had actually changed. I still found ways to sabotage opportunities. Still felt like the same insecure version of myself underneath the surface. And that led me to a frustrating question. Why weren't affirmations working? Turns out the problem wasn't the words. The problem was the foundation those words were landing on. Let me tell you about someone I met a few years ago. We'll call her Maya. Maya wanted to become a public speaker. She had a powerful message and a personal story she knew could help others. She'd survived something traumatic and wanted to share it. But every time she got close to applying for a talk or even just making an Instagram post, she froze. She'd tell herself affirmations like, I am a speaker. My voice matters. I speak with clarity and confidence. But the words bounced off. They didn't land. She told me once, it feels like there's a part of me that hears the words and just doesn't believe them. That part, the one that doesn't believe, that's what we need to talk about? Because affirmations don't work on top of self-rejection. They don't rewire a self-image that hasn't been emotionally prepared to accept something new. Psychologically, this has a name: cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort we feel when we try to hold two conflicting beliefs at once. If you say you're confident, but your subconscious holds onto a deep-seated belief that you're awkward or mess up when you speak, the brain doesn't update. It either ignores the new input, rejects it, or rewrites it to preserve consistency. This principle was first studied in the 1950s by psychologist Leon Festinger, who found that people would go to great lengths to rationalize behaviors that conflicted with their beliefs, even if those behaviors made no logical sense. Why? Because the brain hates internal contradiction. It sees it as a glitch in the matrix. So, when you try to overwrite your current self-image with a positive phrase that your body doesn't believe, your mind flags it as a lie. Or worse, it may trigger subconscious resistance, which psychologists sometimes refer to as the backfire effect. The more you try to insist on a belief you haven't earned emotionally or experientially, the more your subconscious doubles down on the original identity. That's why repetition alone isn't enough. You could affirm that you're loved 1,000 times a day, but if your lived experience has taught you that love is conditional or earned through performance, your nervous system might reject that phrase as unsafe. Not because you're broken, but because your brain is actually doing its job of keeping your inner world coherent. So what actually creates change? Let's go back to Maya. Eventually, she gave up affirmations. Not because she didn't want to grow, but because she could tell they were putting her in a loop of pretending. So, instead, she asked herself a better question. If I already were the kind of person who speaks on stage, what would I do today? So she did the things a speaker might do. Not perfectly, but consistently. She joined a local storytelling group, recorded voice memos just to get used to the sound of her own voice, posted imperfect videos even though they made her cringe. And after a few weeks, something interesting happened. Her relationship to the identity shifted. She stopped needing the affirmation because her actions became the affirmation. In psychology, this shift has a name too: assumption as identity. It's the idea that rather than trying to believe something new and wait for your actions to follow, You act from the new identity and let the belief follow. This is backed by multiple streams of research. From a neuroscience perspective, the brain relies heavily on embodied learning to update its internal maps. That means it doesn't just change based on language, it changes based on action, experience, emotional data, and sensory feedback. This is the principle of neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to rewire itself based on new inputs. But that rewiring doesn't happen just because you say something. It happens because you prove something. Think of it like this. Your brain is always running a background algorithm asking, "Who am I?" And it answers that question by scanning for evidence, not from your words but from your behavior. If you say you're confident but avoid eye contact and stay silent in a group, the brain logs that. If you say you're a writer but never share your work, the brain logs that too. It tracks your behavior, not your wish. That's why affirmations, when used alone, often become a form of spiritual bypassing. They give us a feeling of effort without the discomfort of real change. So here's a better formula. Instead of affirmations, start with identity-based embodiment. Ask, who do I want to become? Then, what would that person do today? And do that. Even in a small way. If you want to become a calm, self-regulated person, don't just say you are calm. Practice breath work during stress. Slow down your reactions. Celebrate a moment when you stayed grounded. That's what rewires the system. If you want to feel confident, don't just affirm the word confidence. Speak up once. Set one boundary. Let yourself be proud of it, even if it felt scary. Every small act becomes a vote in favor of the new identity. And the more votes you cast, the more legitimate that identity feels, until it becomes not something you hope for, but something you are. This is how Maya changed. Not by telling herself she was a speaker, but by doing what a speaker does. Imperfectly, nervously, but repeatedly. And eventually that behavior built enough emotional evidence that her identity followed. I am a speaker wasn't a phrase anymore, it was her lived truth. So if you've ever felt like affirmations don't work for you, here's the truth. It's not because you're doing them wrong. It's because your brain is smarter than a robotic affirmation. It wants coherence, not contradiction. It wants proof, not performance. So give it what it's asking for. Not just repetition, but reality. Not just hope, but habit. Not just saying, but showing. You don't rewire the mind with phrases. You rewire it with proof. Behavior, over time, becomes belief. That's not magic, it's memory, it's neuroplasticity, it's self-concept. And it's editable. This is Ego Edit, and this is only the beginning. Until next time.